Welcome to the Silver Screen Project, where we look back at a series of films in anticipation of an exciting new cinema release.
We've recently been hyping up to Matt Reeves' The Batman, and it's finally here. We watched it just the other night, and we're here to talk about it.
We'll start with the spoiler-free discussion and then get into some nitty-gritty spoilers in the second half.
We shall. So, Sam, what was your overall opinion of The Batman?
I really enjoyed it.
Me too.
I thought it was quite unique. It surprised me quite a lot.
Yeah, same.
Not necessarily with plot stuff. There wasn't massive plot revelations, I would say.
No, but the general how they approach the character is quite unique in how they've done Batman films.
It is. And I don't think, again, if you are completely worried about spoilers, I wouldn't listen to anything. But I think it's not a spoiler to say it's the most kind of grounded, realistic take we've seen in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference with this compared to others is it's more focused on the detective Batman rather than the fighting Batman that we've seen in previous incantations.
That's right. Yeah, and with things like the Riddler, which we'll talk about, there's mysteries that kind of carry on through the whole film and support the plot and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but overall, I'd probably put it in top 3 Batman films.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'd have to watch it again to get a full kind of grasp on it. There is a lot, and it is long, which you hear a lot of people say. It's just shy of 3 hours, including credits.
Yeah.
But I think it pulls you along the whole way. I didn't feel bored at all.
Yeah, I feel like it's paced fairly well. The first half is quite quick, and then it kind of takes a moment to breathe before getting into the final act.
It does, yeah.
Which works quite well. I think it's 3 hours, but I never felt like I was sitting around for 3 hours.
There's films that are 2.25 hours that feel longer than this.
Yes, and we've watched films that felt way longer and are half the length.
Absolutely.
One thing that I really liked coming out of it was how well cast it was. I mean, there's been lots of talk about Robert Pattinson as Batman. Yeah. But aside from that, Paul Dano is great. Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon is such an inspired piece of casting. I can't believe you haven't seen it before.
Picking it up in year 2 and having them already have a relationship, kind of like a bit uncertain, but they seem to trust each other.
Yeah.
It works really well. It's that classic combo.
Colin Farrell's great as the Penguin. Zoe Kravitz is good. Yeah. It's just, it's really well cast. I was really quite impressed with.
I think with both of those two, with Penguin and Catwoman, I think you get a lot of depth to the character, which we don't always see, especially with Penguin. Yeah. He's not as kind of a caricature. He's still kind of one of the stranger characters that we meet. Yeah. But he feels more like a human. They all feel quite human in this.
Yeah.
Don't they?
I think it's got quite an interesting and quite on point mix of it is really comic booky, but in a realistic universe.
Yeah.
Penguin is still quite a silly character, but he's a realistic silly character. If that makes sense.
And he's eccentric and he looks strange.
Yeah.
Nothing like Colin Farrell at all.
No, not at all.
People would watch it and not realise it's him. Very
precisely.
Easily.
As well as like it being comic booky without being too silly, if you will. Another thing that I thought what worked really well was that it is dark and gritty, but it's also funny.
Yeah, I do think it was sparse funny moments, but they don't feel forced.
I can think of several points where I did laugh, and I wasn't expecting that at all from this dark Batman film.
Yeah, I think they're less, because we're used to kind of Marvel quips, and even in the Dark Knight series, which we covered recently, the lines are more kind of, the characters are joking, whereas in this it's funny for us more than or they're like dark comebacks almost rather than like active jokes. It's hard to describe without spoiling anything, but there's some funny moments, and I think it's much needed kind of levity in a pretty grim film, to be honest, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I think Batman in general, Bruce Wayne Batman, very, very good.
Yeah, as opposed to the Dark Knight trilogy, this is more Batman focused. We see less Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And it's more just Batman. And I think it works. I think
it really works,
Batman is really good. And as you mentioned, it being year 2 is quite an interesting point to take this character out.
Because we don't know where he's we know vaguely where he's come from, but we don't know his experiences.
Yeah, and it's quite clear that he's not entirely sure of who the Batman is at this point.
Exactly, and it's almost like his formative, again, without spoiling anything too much, his formative kind of adventure. Yeah. His formative case. I just like how like angsty he is. Like he's really like troubled. More so than we see like angry Bruce Wayne with Christian Bale, and he's very angry at the world, but this one is he's severely like strange.
Yes,
severely messed up by his experience.
Yeah, and he's very like he's the most goth Batman we've had. I feel.
I don't. Yeah, again, it's if you've seen the trailers, he wears the eyeliner and he wears it. You see him take it off, and you see him take the cowl off, and he's still got it on. Which is
his long floppy hair and
I like that because it's like he doesn't care about how he looks. Like he's just let himself go, not in a physical, not in an appearance way, rather than he's probably still peak performance, but
now you mention it, I don't think we ever see a topless Batman in this, where we see
we do at least once. I remember him thinking he was very pale because he's nocturnal, as you mentioned very early on.
But Christian Bale is often topless, so we quite used to see it,
especially
Batman.
In the first one when he bulked up so much.
And we see Ben Affleck topless quite a lot as well, I feel.
You're focusing on a lot on this. Gotham City was probably my favorite iteration in this film.
Yes,
I think it's so like dirty, and it's always raining.
But at the same time, it feels like a real city. It feels lived in.
Yes,
it feels like it's not a set.
It feels like a perfect combination of all the ones we've seen in live action, and even I think the Arkham games. It kind of done that stuff well. There's enough neon to like have highlights, but there's loads of dark, dank kind of areas.
And it kind of plays into the story a bit about the setting of the city.
Yes, it does.
Although I did find it amusing that every other street in Gotham is under some train tracks.
Yes, there's a lot of that.
I thought, but is that the Wayne monorail?
I don't know.
I don't know if that's in this universe.
I don't know. We talked a little bit about Riddler. Without spoiling it, I thought the performance was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the only other time we've seen Riddler in live action is Jim Carrey, and it's a very different performance.
It's very different. I mean, they're, I suppose, equal interpretations of the character.
Yeah.
This one much more modernized and an actual serial killer, as I said earlier.
But he was really fun and has the way we find out more about the characters really interesting. It keeps you engaged, and
the mystery that goes through is about why things are happening. We know that it's Riddler from the get-go kind of thing.
And Paul Dano playing the Riddler spends a lot of the film masked.
Yes.
But you can still see his performance through and he's really good.
He's really good. And I don't know if he's got some sort of voice changer or something, but it's disturbing. Like I would say it's the scariest Batman villain at the moment, with my initial reaction kind of thing. I think you could argue that Heath Ledger's Joker is scarier in some ways.
You could argue the Dark Knight Trilogy villains are more fantastical, so they're less scary. Like the Scarecrow's scary, but it's all very comic booky, whereas this is a real person in the real world, and that's terrifying.
Yes, and there's some stuff that we'll talk about in a moment where the story goes that when we left the cinema, I was like, that freaked me out a little bit. Like the real world kind of, not real world implications, but it is very like the events of this film could happen. Yeah. Apart from maybe the vigilante jumping around, grappling around the city. But,
so shall we go into
spoilers? I think we can get into spoilers.
Okay, so if you haven't seen the film, I'd stop here, go see it, and then come finish the listening. So let's talk Riddler.
So very Zodiac inspired.
Very Zodiac. When they find his flat and look through his notes, it's just pages and pages of scribbles.
What's really interesting about that is we see Batman doing a journal in the first kind of scene almost. Yes. And he is very much a copycat of Batman.
There's so many parts about the Riddler that it is Batman. Even the opening scene where he kills the character, he's standing in the shadows, in the darkness, just like Batman. He's doing the
binocular. We see the binocular point of view, don't we?
Yeah, and then we see it from Batman.
I mean, he even says to him, doesn't he? Like he thought that their little game was like him helping Batman along, like Batman doing the bits that he couldn't do, kind of thing. He's very deluded, and we don't really realize that until we see
as partners. Yeah, there's a great scene towards the end after Riddler's been arrested, where he asks Batman to visit him. Batman goes to see him, and he goes on this rant, and we're not sure if he knows if he's Bruce Wayne or not, because he's talking about Bruce Wayne. The thing.
Where did you come away from that? Because I thought when I watched it that he knew, but I think because he doesn't make a big deal about it, I think he's just ranting that Bruce Wayne was the one that got away.
There's a key line where he says, we didn't get Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
Talking
and it's almost it is a fake out, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
and even the look on Batman's face, he looks like he's been found out.
He's in the apartment and he sees the picture of Bruce Wayne next to Batman. It says, "I know who you are" or something, and there's lots of unmasking.
It works really well in the story that Bruce Wayne is one of the Riddler's targets because he's from the Wayne family,
the
who
sins
are dirty.
Of the fathers and everything.
So Riddler, great fun.
Yeah,
and
really
all
good,
the mirroring of the Batman is really, really well done. The Penguins is kind of a secondary villain, but he's interesting enough to keep you engaged in the character.
I like how they didn't kill off any of the characters, well, the main characters at all.
Carmine Falcone.
Okay. But there's I always say Falcone as well. I don't know because I've read it and I just
I think that's like the Italian pronunciation.
Yeah, but I like the main kind of supervillains then, let's say.
Yes.
They didn't kill any of them off. They're all going to have future kind of careers and we'll revisit them. And I think they're doing a Penguin TV show, which I'm not super keen on. But I'd like to see more of the character. But I'd like to see maybe skip ahead. We'll talk about it then, but maybe skip ahead a bit and see him more of his place. I think
the one character that does get killed in Falcone then opens it up for Penguin to become the Penguin.
Well,
that we
also
know of.
there's Salvatore Moroni or whatever. Moroni,
in prison.
Who's in prison. I like how we didn't get a casting because they can put in a big name gangster kind of actor. Maybe even get like one of the like Robert De Niro or like Al Pacino. Do you know what I mean? Because it would work.
Yeah, definitely.
Or just a good character actor. Just going back to Batman and Bruce Wayne and his weird kind of personality, basically. I really like how he just doesn't have a public persona, and when he's in public he's just like awkward, like he's tense, and the bit in the funeral is really the only bit we see, but he's just staring at people.
He's so
socially
awkward.
Broken,
he doesn't know how to be around people because he is Batman.
And even when he's Batman, he doesn't really let his doors down, even with Selena Kyle by the end. And there's loads of points where he just doesn't reply to people.
Yeah.
And it's not in this charismatic, cool way. It feels very much like this damaged person.
Christian Bale's Batman put extensive effort into creating the Bruce Wayne character.
And I'd like to see that in future films. And I think we will get that because of where it ends. And he realizes that he needs to be the Dark Knight and the fear and all this and vengeance, but have some public image, maybe too public with the end. But the other with Batman, I really like how he seemingly, before we see the Batmobile, he's seemingly just taking his costume off in back alleys, putting it in a backpack and just riding home on a bike.
I did enjoy that. Like there's like he does Batman stuff and then it cuts to him like outside the building and he's just like in like a hoodie and stuff. And I was like,
and I think there's one point where he goes into the club at the end and he's dressed in his normal clothes and then he changes after like doing some sabotage. He's wearing like a really bulky outfit, so I think he has got his suit on. He's just kind of put a hoodie over the top, like you say.
He's obviously not practice. The club entrance bit was one thing I found hilarious. So the 3 times that he goes to the club. So the first time he turns up as Batman, the guy comes out, he's like, "Do you know who I am?" And then the twin comes and he's like, "You're not coming," and he beats them all up and goes in. Second time he turns up as Bruce Wayne, he's like, "Do you know who I am?" And they're like, "Oh my god, it's Bruce Wayne," and let him in. And then the third time he knocks on the door and the guy goes out and he just sneaks in behind him.
It's almost like he's learned each time, isn't it? Yeah.
And I think that's a overall message of this movie is Batman learning and growing.
Yes.
And kind of the standout point at the end is that he's learned that he should be less about vengeance and more about hope for Gotham.
Yeah, and he can still strike fear into the criminals. We haven't spoken about that initial scene, but it's very, very cool. Like when first scene with Batman.
Yeah.
He's learned by the end to be a public figure of hope, like you say.
Yeah.
And I thought all the stuff with the flare and stuff, it was not what I was expecting, but it was kind of gorgeous. It worked really well.
Yeah, for such like as we said, like a goth Batman who's all about spends the first half of the film just literally beating the shit out of people. At the end to see him doing more generic heroic stuff than we've seen in a long time, of him not fighting villains, just saving people, and literally it's daytime at the end and he's just there working with the police and just saving people.
It's like, although I don't like having Batman be caught on camera, because I feel like it just leads too many doors to. We have pictures of Bruce Wayne, but you can excuse
I feel it's one of those. It's a comic book movie. You have to suspend your disbelief to a certain extent.
And people are supposed to be like, why would this weird, spoiled, pale, like mentally damaged man also do this kind of thing? They can't see him. He almost seems like a weird, frail, like goth kid, like you say.
Yeah.
You can say, I don't know if you've read The Long Halloween. But this is very much inspired by that. Although I was going to make a joke about the short Halloween because it's instead set over 5 or 6 days or a week. But one thing about that is Falcone is very present in that with Catwoman as well. And he has scar marks on him in the comic, which he gets throughout the end of this film, and then dies very shortly afterwards. But they did the scars, so
So I mentioned in the spoiler-free bit about how actually funny moments there was.
Yes.
Falco reminded me because there's the Spanish rat with wings, and they're like, "Is it Batman? Is it Penguin? Is it Falcon?" And I'm like, there's just loads of people in the Batman universe with wings.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the penguin one was stupid because they're like, oh, it's a stool pigeon. Oh, that must be a penguin. I'm like, no, it's obvious. A rat with wings is Batman. Like, but it's not because it's And
there's the thumbnail joke with the USB. Was good.
You know what? I don't want to be like braggy, but right before they did that, I went thumb drive to Amy, and then she was like, what?
So on that, we see many of the Riddler's riddles. How many of them did you figure out before Batman?
Like 1 or 2.
I got 1.
I think one of the early ones I got.
When he
don't give you the time.
No,
but it moves at a pace.
With the one with Gil Coulson where he's got the bomb around his neck. The first one of them, I was like, justice, it's justice, and then Batman goes, it's justice, and I was like, yes.
See, again, it's the world's greatest detective, which I think Penguin makes a crack at Jim and Batman. He's like, look at you two, world's greatest detective. Another funny bit after Batman, he punches Gordon to get out. And Gordon's like, you could have pulled your punch. And he's like, I did. Like, that was good. And what was it? The gloves at the crime scene?
Yeah, the policeman's like, oh, you're just going to let him handle the evidence? He's like, he's wearing gloves. Like, these are funny bits.
And the humor works because everything else is so like flat and bleak. Not, serious.
So one other bit that I kind of noticed, having talked about it after, was how the film is kind of written and set out very much seems like issues of a comic book.
Right,
you could imagine that like each of one of the Riddler's murders is a comic strip. And then they go together to make the book that you buy as a collector.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I don't think I've often seen comic book movies written like that, whereas this really does seem to translate from a set of issues into one longer story. That's really
interesting, And you know what? They could even do a director's cut where there's chapter net titles, which is very Zack Snyder. I think they did that for the new one.
You could literally imagine that after each murder and then Batman getting the clue, to be continued. And then you go into the next one.
I think that's part of the reason the pacing mostly works really well, because it is divided quite equally into, not necessarily equally in time, but equally in terms of plot. As you go.
There's lots of, it's like several like 45-minute stories in one overall arching story.
To kind of just wrap things up and look into the future, we see a little hint of a character in Arkham Asylum there. I say a little hint, pretty heavy-handed.
The Joker.
Do you know who played him?
I do, but I've forgotten it now.
It's Barry Keogh from
that's the one.
Dunkirk and from Eternals.
He's a good actor.
He is.
Quite be interested. I hope they don't bring Joker in too soon, because Joker's in everything. We don't need another Joker now.
I'd like to see maybe a bit more of him in the next one, but maybe still in Arkham. Because I heard, doing a little bit of reading today, he was initially going to be someone that Batman goes to interview to get a perspective on Riddler and kind of homicidal maniacs and stuff. And he was going to be somebody who, he wasn't yet the Joker, but it was obvious he was going to become the Joker kind of thing. But I think they took it away because it kind of, first of all, you'd expect him to be more in it. And also it kind of takes over a little bit. I'm not sure how I feel about that, really. I think that will have to settle, but I'm interested in the prospect of more villains and that sort of thing. I mean, who would you like to see kind of going into the future?
So, considering what they did with Riddler in terms of having a really serious, dark version where we previously saw a comic book one, I'd quite like to see Mr. Freeze as the villain in the second film.
I think Matt Reeves might have said that he wants to do it.
Because I like it. We see a serious take in Gotham, the TV series.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Who's quite good, but he's not.
Does he have a freeze gun?
He has a freeze gun,
yeah.
But see, like we saw with the Riddler, a really terrifying, realistic version of this character could be quite interesting. I love the Arnie version, but it is over the top silly.
Yeah, I'm just thinking because I can only imagine now like a serial killer thing, and they could do something where he's stealing organs for his wife or something, but they've got to be really careful, and I'm sure they're aware not to replicate the same kind of pattern.
I just feel like Mr. Freeze we haven't seen in a while.
Totally, yeah.
Like we've seen a lot of the other major villains more recently.
Yeah, I think Scarecrow would work amazingly, but I don't think they'll do him.
I feel like we've seen him too recently.
I think he would be really cool.
Penguin will probably feature in the second film.
I think Penguin, will carry on through. Someone like Clayface, I've seen people mention.
Yeah.
Maybe someone who can kind of change their face a little bit. But again, I would like to see someone that Batman can fight a bit more. Because I thought we didn't mention really that the final scene with all the Riddlers and the shooters and all that, which was the bit that kind of freaked me out a little bit. I thought was a really good Batman scene.
Yes,
and when it happened, I was like, right, this is kind of the key piece that we haven't seen so
I'd like
far,
to think
almost.
we'd see more of that, but the reason this didn't have too much fighting is because the Riddler isn't a fighty villain.
Exactly,
he's a riddle
and it would
villain.
be interesting. Maybe have a couple of villains, have Mr. Freeze plus some people that you can fight as well. Yeah.
So, do you have any trivia to?
I haven't had a chance to look at any, so I'd hoping you have some.
Yes, I've got one piece.
Should we call it Trivial Me This?
Trivial Me This. So a plot point of the story is the Riddler reveals that Thomas Wayne had a journalist killed.
Right.
That journalist is named, has the last name Elliot.
Is this Thomas Elliot?
Thomas Elliot becomes Hush in the comics.
And one of the things that comes up says Hush.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Hush became a villain because Thomas Wayne...
He was a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne or something?
Yeah, I think Thomas Wayne fucked over his father.
Yeah.
So it may not be that this character is Hush, but his son may be Hush in a later film.
I think they planted the seed for that very well. I think another one, Court of Owls, has been mentioned in interviews and stuff. Again, it's a conspiracy that goes deep into Gotham, so maybe wait till the third film. But that's interesting. Yeah.
So in the lead up to this, we've been asking if the Dark Knight trilogy got us more or less hyped for this film.
Yes.
Project or Project, did this film live up to the hype?
Project.
I would also say Project.
I
genuinely thought this was really, really good.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm very annoyed that we have to wait probably about 3 years for the next one. I'm very upset. Although hopefully we'll see some TV shows set in the universe in between, and they don't know us into not liking the next one.
So I hope you've enjoyed listening to our first series of the Silver Screen Project. We'll be back at some point. We will mention it on the podcast.
The Project.
And that is the Batman.
Bye.
I'm Batman.
I'm Vengeance. Bye.